Hello everybody and welcome to my official final mock draft of the 2025 off-season, I guess you could say. I'm very excited to get into this, and I think this mock is going to be a lot different in comparison to a couple of the other ones that I've done. You know, some time's gone by, the draft is coming up, it is tomorrow. If you guys are excited for that, feel free to tune in. I'm going to be live streaming it for a couple hours as it goes on, just giving my own reactions to each of the picks. And I'm very excited. This is something I usually do each year, but to be able to do it on this channel is going to be very exciting. And like I said, very excited for that to happen. And let's just get right into it. And guys, I'm so excited for this. I mean, like I said, this is going to be a very different mock draft in comparison to my other ones. I don't really know what's going to happen. I mean, I feel like these first three picks are guaranteed at this point, but then again, anything could happen. This could completely change around, and I guess that's what makes, you know, the draft so exciting, is every year you kind of think you have some idea of what's going on, and then going into it, it ends up being completely different. And so, but right here, Tennessee Titans with the #1 overall pick in my final mock draft, at least. What I think is going to happen is quarterback Cam Ward out of Miami. Go out there and get your franchise quarterback of the future, even though he's not a generational option like a Trevor Lawrence, a Caleb Williams, even make a Drake May. Cam Ward is up there for one of the better graded quarterbacks that I've seen in the last couple of years. He was a pretty elite quarterback coming out of college. He's got decent experience, and see what he can do in Tennessee as we get to pick #2. And this one is going to stay the same for me as well. It's going to be Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter, I mean, I've said pretty much all there is to say about a player like Travis Hunter. He is absolutely versatile, will likely be playing wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns before, you know, maybe say a couple years switching back and forth roles, maybe getting a good grasp on one side of the ball before, you know, trying to play those two positions at the same time. But then after that, and I think both those first two picks are really great. I think Browns could end up trading back into the first round if they want to pick a player like Shedeur Sanders, or they could end up just drafting a quarterback, say second or third round. This mock, we're just going to be doing first round, but I do have some more ones where I've, you know, having some quarterbacks taken in second, third round. But anyways, Giants pick Abdul Carter. It's no question for me they're going Abdul Carter at this point. Some people have mocked possibly Ashton Jeanty, possibly a defensive player. I think you could wait and get a nice guy in the second round, say if Kenneth Grant ends up falling, or, you know, there's a couple of great defensive players in this draft, and say they end up falling, then I think, you know, the Giants have a good chance of grabbing them early second round. But Abdul Carter is going to be such a nice piece to rotate around that edge, and he's mostly going to be playing, you know, as a dominant edge rusher. Brian Burns will be on the other side. You'll have Kayvon Thibodeau. Maybe he can run. I don't even know. You could have someone run some linebacker / edge, but I think that would probably turn the New York Giants defense into the best edge room in the entire league, or at least one of the best ones. And I think their defense becomes so much more powerful after picking a player like Carter. You know, coming out of Penn State, he is just an absolute dominator at the position, and is probably one of the best edge rushing prospects I've seen since Micah Parsons. So you get good comparisons there. Both went to Penn State, and both of them are absolute studs, and I think Abdul Carter is going to wow the league. I don't even think people are quite ready to see the potential that a player like Abdul Carter brings to the table. And since I'm a Penn State fan, I'll stop glazing him at this point and get on to the next pick. Could it be Ashton Jeanty here to the New England Patriots? They don't really value running backs that high, so I'm going to end up going with my continued pick, Will Campbell. At this point, I feel like he's a lock for that. And like I said, in the past few mocks, I've done a lot of these, you know, similar things. But starting with this pick the Jacksonville Jaguars have, I'm going to start to change things up. Typically here, I like to go Mason Graham. And if I'm going back to this pick, like I said in the past, Patriots need that offensive line. They need that unit. Will Campbell is a very nice option coming out of LSU. I know there's been a couple of questions about his length and certain things like that. I think there's no question. He's just kind of got draft fatigue over time. Campbell is still such like a great player, so picking him there is kind of a no-brainer. You could go Genty if you're really looking to replace Ramondre Stevenson in a very poor running back room, but this is a massively deep running back class, so I don't really see the need there. I think this is pretty much a locked-in top 4. Then it gets to the Jaguars pick, and this is where I really start to question things, because I'm like, who do the Jaguars end up going here at number 5? 3 options right here, the top 3 players. A wild card option would be down here. I've seen some people mocking Jalen Walker. I like Jalen Walker. I think he's a nice option. If they were going defense, I would think they go Mason Graham. Edge isn't really much of a need, nor is linebacker for them. They have Devin Lloyd. They have, Foy Lukun, I believe, still on the team. And, man, Genty, I think bringing in Liam Cohen, a whole new regime coming in. You already have Brian Thomas Jr., and you don't really have much after that. So I can see Ted McMillan going here. This is really where it starts to get tough for me, because you have Travis Etienne. He struggled last year. Do you give up on him? I don't know. They really like Etienne a lot. I like him too. But the run game just was not there last year, and 1 season left on his contract. I mean, you have Tank Bigsby at the same time. I just don't know. It's really hard for me to mock Genty here, although he is the favorite at this point to go to the Jaguars, which is absolutely insane. You can see the Jaguars trading out of this position. But I'm going to follow the consensus board, and I'm going to go Ashton Genty right here. Going to get things going kind of crazy. Ashton Genty to the Jacksonville Jaguars at pick number 5. And that's just... that offense becomes so much better with that pick. I feel like you add either Ted McMillan or Genty, and that offense becomes absolutely something you should worry about. Brian Thomas, Ashton Genty, Trevor Lawrence, and just continue to add to that, in the later rounds of the draft. And I think Genty's such a fun pick. If you're picking a running back, he's a generational type player. It's a good draft for you to be able to get a player like him as we get to the Raiders at pick 6. And like I said, guys, this draft is going to be so fun to watch. It's been fun to mock. Because we really don't even know what's going on. I mean, top 4 picks I feel like are locked. Once it gets to this Genty pick, it could be Mason Graham, it could be Ted McMillan, it could be Genty. But I don't know, we're kind of guessing at this point. Like I said previously, I like Mason Graham to that spot if you're looking for that standout defensive player. I like Ted McMillan if you're looking for a good wide receiver 2 to pair up with Brian Thomas. But at the same time, Genty in that backfield, say you trade Etienne away before his contract expires, or you let him learn and do like a 1-2 punch with him and Genty. You could try that, but I feel like Etienne likely gets traded, and then you have Genty and maybe Bigsby. But that is definitely a tough one, because you don't know if Etienne's going to end up bouncing back or not. Time will only tell for that pick. And then that gets us to this. And I keep thinking about that Raiders offense. It's basically Brock Bowers and Jakobi Meyers. So I could see a Ted McMillan here. But the defense was absolutely atrocious last year. They have Geno Smith at quarterback now. You can sling that rock to Bowers, Jakobi Meyers all day. They're not bad options. So I do actually like this pick right here. Mason Graham going to the Raiders at pick number 6. You get that defensive interior guy. I can't really name anybody in that defensive interior line. I know they went out a couple years ago, got what's his name? Tyree Wilson from Texas A&M. He hasn't really panned out. Max Crosby had a down year last season, and I don't really know. I just feel like they need that standout defensive interior piece. And who do they have? They have Christian Wilkins as well. But at the same time, just continue to build that defense up. And this draft, it has some great players. So second, third round, maybe the Raiders can end up going more offensive driven. But I feel like Geno, Brock Bowers, Jakobi Meyers, you don't have to worry that much with that offense. Trey Tucker's been pretty nice as well. Running back, like I said before as well, running back class is so deep, so they could definitely grab somebody later on. But that's going to be my locked-in top 6. I know I've changed some things around. Genty to the Jaguars, Genty on the Jags. Like, doesn't that just sound... It kind of sounds like it's right, you know? Mason Graham, a good defensive piece. And then we get down here, and continuing for the Jets, it's been Armand Membou. May just very well be the best offensive lineman in this entire draft. Membou is just... He has that elite playmaking ability. Like, you know, he's arguably a better defender or a better offensive lineman than Will Campbell. Will Campbell is just kind of going based off, you know, aura points up here to the Patriots. It just seems like a nice fit. But I think Armand Membou is arguably the best tackle in this entire draft, best offensive lineman in this entire draft. Him, Kelvin Banks, and Will Campbell are right up there for the best offensive lineman. But at the same time, Jets get him down here. He fits a lot of their needs, and they got to start rebuilding that offense up. I could see Ted McMillan going here, but I think he's going to end up falling. And in this one, I'm going to end up grabbing... This has been the favorite at this point, and that's Jalen Walker going to the Panthers. Now, they desperately do need wide receiver, but I feel like some of these guys could turn up and, you know, start playing a little bit better. Adam Thielen popped off in a couple games last year, and then they trade away Terrace Marshall, but they still have some a couple players on roster who, you know, can do it just enough. And also, this is a team that I definitely see going maybe a wide receiver or, you know, defensive back in the later rounds, get something for that offense. But, you know, they have a nice running back room as well. So, got Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle. So, I think grab a defensive player that's really going to stand out. You got, J.C. Horn, Derek Brown's coming back after that injury season. So, I feel like Jalen Walker's only going to be an additional piece and is kind of like your Brian Burns replacement at this point because he plays both linebacker and edge. So, and then down to the New Orleans Saints, and every single time I've been picking Shedeur Sanders. Do we pick Shedeur Sanders here? Or will he end up falling down here? This is really where we start to question. Because I'm also wondering where Ted McMillan's going to go. And this is really tough once it starts getting to this point. Tyler Warren could go here if they want. I do believe they just gave Jawan Johnson a slight extension, though. So I don't know if I see him going there. Derek Carr could be out for the season. Who's even their quarterback at this point? I feel like they're slightly desperate. I don't see a Walter Nolan going here. I see the pick being either Tyler Warren and I guess just Tyler Warren or Shedeur Sanders or Ted McMillan too. Ted McMillan could go here, and he could be kind of nice on New Orleans. Maybe just build up that receiver core. I don't know. I just think it's too early for Shedeur Sanders to go. And I know I've mocked him there in a couple of other drafts. I like to play with where the quarterbacks are going to go. But I don't know. I can't see him going that early. I could see a team trading up in the late first round. Maybe grabbing him early second or something. But I do think he's going to fall in this draft. There's one clear-cut QB1. And then after that, it's kind of... It's Shedeur and then maybe Jackson Dart. But I wouldn't pick him until the later round. I think New Orleans is probably going to think that as well. Despite Derek Carr being injured, Ted McMillan's the pick there. You pick him up, Chris Olave, Ted McMillan, that offense gets better, and then maybe even you just draft a quarterback next year when the class is better as well. So there you go. I like Ted McMillan actually going to the Saints. I think that's a pretty good pickup. As we get down here to the Bears, and I'm picking Tyler Warren here. This is going to be something entirely different than what I've done before. Tyler Warren, I don't know, Cole Kmet is nice and everything, but at the same time, Tyler Warren is an absolute beast. You need some additional help blocking. You need some additional help in the receiving game. Tyler Warren's your guy, and I think for the Chicago Bears, they may be upset that Genty goes so early, but getting Tyler Warren as a consolation prize is absolutely awesome. Pair him up, him and Cole Kmet can just go crazy in that receiving game, and Caleb Williams gets a new weapon. So I feel like that's perfect. Like I said, things are changing up in this mock. Oh, and this is a tough pick here. Because I think for the 49ers, dream pickup would be a player like Will Johnson here. But also at the same time, Walter Nolan's here. You lost Javon Hargrave. He goes to the Vikings. Is Charvarius Ward still on the team? I believe he is. So I don't think cornerback's the craziest need. And then there's not really... Could go Josh Simmons here. Or Kelvin Banks. But in my final mock, I think I'm going to go defense. They just lost their whole defense. Jahad Campbell's here. This is the pick where everything's really going to like kind of change up through the draft, because up here you can definitely say, oh yeah, this guy will be picked here. But for the Niners, it could be literally anyone. It could be Will Johnson, Walter Nolan. They could go Mike Green. They could go Jahdae Barron. Kenneth Grant is an option, I guess. I've had Mason Graham falling down here and then picking him up. But I don't know. I feel like Will Johnson. I'm going to go Walter Nolan. Just because that defensive interior, I can't even... There's nobody there. And at least you have Charvarius Ward at cornerback, and you have some slightly above average corners. Like, I believe Diamador Lenore is still on the team. Unless he plays safety. He might play safety. But at the same time, your DB room isn't entirely cooked. I mean, you lost Talanoa Hufanga, which sucks. But you need somebody for that defensive interior. Nick Bosa is still on the team, so you have him. But your linebacker core was decimated. No more Dre Greenlaw. So you need to start improving that defense. And Walter Nolan's an absolute standout defensive player from Ole Miss. He's really just a beast. He's only going up and up in draft stock. And I think you get him, and you're happy about that. I know it's not the most insane pick overall for the Niners, but I think they'd be happy to have him. Right here, options for the Cowboys would be Luther Burden, Omarion Hampton this year. Don't actually think they'll draft him. I don't think they're as high on him as a couple of other teams are. Or edge like Donovan Izaraku after losing Randy Gregory. Or no, DeMarcus Lawrence, sorry. Randy Gregory. He's been off the team for a while. And I think I'm just going to continue to pick Matthew Golden here. Matthew Golden's just like, it just feels like the right pick to the Cowboys. You got the Texas guy, stays in state, just playing for his team. And yeah, I like Matthew Golden. He'll be a nice wide receiver too. I don't really see that wide receiver 1 potential that some people talk about. But you pair him up with CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver 2. He could be really nice. And you don't really have anybody else in that offense. So Matthew Golden to the Cowboys is a very nice pickup for them. Despite me being an Eagles fan, I will give them a decent player for once in one of my mock drafts. As we get to the Dolphins, another Will Johnson landing spot. And at this point, I'm still going with my gut and picking Jahdae Barron. Back-to-back Texas players go right here. And I don't know. Will Johnson feels like a nice fit. Obviously, you're losing Jalen Ramsey. All you really have back there is, say, Cater Coho, and that's about all. They definitely need to go cornerback. I don't really see them going anything else. I mean, it's a possibility that they take a tackle. Josh Simmons would be perfect right here for them. Or it's also, Armstead did retire, so tackle is very much a possibility. But your cornerback room is absolutely decimated. You need to build that back up. Jahdae Barron is a nice option for you at that point as we get to the Colts. And this spot, usually I was having Tyler Warren go here, but now I don't really know who to go. Mike Green's not bad if they want to add to the edge room. Malachi Starks, absolute top 10 player in this class, should go earlier, but it's just been kind of falling in a lot of mocks. But I'm actually going to take Jahad Campbell here, I think. Let me look it over. Colston Loveland's good too. I just don't think he goes this early. And then interior offensive line, I don't see that happening either. So I say Jahad Campbell here. You have him play linebacker. You could have him run some edge if you'd like to move him out of his traditional spot at linebacker. But he is more of that linebacker role where he doesn't really play edge. He's an off-ball linebacker. And I've talked about Jahad Campbell a lot. He's kind of an old school linebacker in a new school linebacker's body, the way that he plays. And I think the Colts would be very happy to draft him in this position. If you want to go and get Richardson a nice option, you could go Colston Loveland. Yeah, I could see the Colts trading up for him, say maybe end of the first, early second, when a team is possibly going to take him. And it could be a very nice option for them later on. But right now I'm going to take Jahad Campbell. I think it's best player available type thing at a need of position, or at a position of need for the Colts, which is linebacker. And then we get here. Ooh, Atlanta is going to be an interesting debate to have here, because Mike Green is apparently becoming one of the favorites to land in Atlanta. Luther Burden, very nice option. I see them going defense more than anything. Will Johnson would be nice to pair up with AJ Terrell, but I don't think corner is also another thing that they need. James Pierce Jr. here. He's going to fall. I don't really know here. It's a tough pick. Donovan Izaraku could be the option there. Mike Green. I'm going to pick Mike Green, actually. And this changes it up because I've had him as like the perfect pick to the Cincinnati Bengals for the longest time. But in this one, I'm just going to go Mike Green to Atlanta. Add to that edge room after you lose Grady Jarrett. And yeah, I like him there. I don't really see a lot of other players. Like, can't go linebacker at this point. Both the top two are off the board. So you just go edge, kind of BPA. You don't need a safety, really. And yeah, so Mike Green to the Falcons, pick 15, goes down to Arizona. And I think this is the perfect spot for Will Johnson to land. Will Johnson should not slip any further past them. Another great landing spot would be Kenneth Grant going here. I'm going to go Will Johnson. Like I said, he's been one of the perfect kind of match made in heaven type dream picks for me for the longest time. Him to either Arizona or possibly the 49ers up here. But I think Arizona just fits so well. They need that kind of standout corner, and they get him here in the draft. Will Johnson is an absolute, has the potential to be a top 5 player overall in this entire class. He was awesome at Michigan, and although he didn't have the best last season, I still think he has that upside right there. So he's the pick at 16. And then who do the Bengals go? It's got to be defense, right? And this is a tough spot, because if this mock goes this way, then I can see them totally trading out of this position. This is really tough, because you could even go interior offensive line, Tyler Booker, if they want to improve. He's a good guard. You know what? I think the pick here is actually going to be Kenneth Grant. Kenneth Grant, surprisingly, like, I didn't even think I would end up picking him there, but I think that kind of works out perfectly. They need, you know, a defensive interior guy, a defensive line player, and Grant right there is kind of another kind of match made in heaven. I could imagine him already playing for the Bengals, and they get that nice nose tackle. He's going to need some time to develop, but that's going to help you kind of rebuild that defense, which is, you know, you just paid all of these superstar wide receivers. You paid T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. So you're going to need to get younger at a couple positions of need. You have Daxton Hill at safety, and then Trey Hendrickson doesn't want to play anymore. He's getting older. Jermaine Pratt and your linebacker room's relatively old overall. Go and get Kenneth Grant. You get a young defensive interior player at a position of need, and I feel like that's kind of perfect. And then this is the pick where a lot of people, like, this could be Colston Loveland here, but I've continued to see him slip further and further. Seattle Seahawks do not value tight ends that high. Obviously, this is like a dream pick for them right here, but I don't actually see them going with Colston Loveland. So then that goes down to interior offensive line. It's been a spot where I've mocked Tyler Booker before. I don't really know who everybody's picking at this point. James Pierce could go here. Wow, this might be one of the toughest picks in the entire draft, actually, because if the Seahawks do get to this point, I don't really know. I know they don't value that offensive line too much. They did get, what's his name, a couple of years ago from Mississippi. Do they go with a first round interior offensive lineman? I just feel like that doesn't feel like the Seahawks, you know? Could go Nick Scourton here. He's been going a lot higher in mocks. And I'm actually going to go with Nick Scourton here. Or Nick Scourton. And that's just because I don't see the Seahawks... I don't see a lot of teams valuing Tyler Booker that high. I see him slipping maybe into the second round. He's a nice player, but I don't know. Interior offensive line isn't really valued that high unless it's like a Tyler Lindenbaum type player. And Nick Scourton's just sitting there. When he played at Purdue, he was a top 5 pick lock, say a year or 2 years ago. Goes to Texas A&M. He's still pretty dominant, and I think you're happy to get him here. Izaraku's nice as well, but I could see him slipping a bit and being a pick probably down late first round as we get to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Pick number 19. This could be a Malachi Starks landing spot. I'm actually not going to have him go here. Not really any linebackers on the board. I don't see them taking a Carson Schwessinger. He's a possible first round guy, but if any team's going to take him, it's going to be the Detroit Lions. Let's see. Izaraku's still here. Could be an absolute rock on that defensive line. Boom. James Pierce Jr. is here. He's a nice option. I have a specific team that I'm going to have him go to in this mock that I really like. Kevin Winston here. I know Starks is still on the board, but I'm going to have Donovan Izaraku. I don't know. This is a really tough pick, too, as we get further and further down the board. I don't know if they're going to value him that high. Could be a Malachi Starks, but I mean, you have Antoine Winfield, though. I feel like you don't need that much. Not a tight end landing spot. This is rough. I'm just going to go Donovan Izaraku, just get some edge in that room. I don't know if this will be something that actually happens on draft day. You can see Izaraku going to a couple places. I could see him going to the Cowboys. I could see him going right here to the Falcons. But I'm just going to mock him there. They kind of pick best player available at a position of need. And you could go Malachi Starks if you're Buccaneers, but I don't know. I just continue to see him slip. Safety isn't valued as high as edge, so I'm just going to pick Izaraku there. Sorry if you're a Buccaneers fan and you don't like that, but that's going to be my final pick for them, getting Donovan Izaraku. And then it's been Luther Burden in most of my mocks, but apparently the favorite is Omarion Hampton. I love Luther Burden going to the Broncos. Like I said, it's been my dream pick if it happens on draft day. I would love to see it. But in this mock, I'm going to go with Omarion Hampton, and he's not going to fall any further. I think, especially for fantasy football, he's going to be an absolutely tremendous option to play because the Broncos have such a solid offensive line. You put Hampton behind there. Even their crappy running backs were doing really good last season. You know, Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin and whoever else. Put Omarion Hampton, who's like a juiced up, rookie Javonte Williams. And that is it's going to be so fun to watch. It's going to be so fun for fantasy football value. And that's why he's going to the Denver Broncos. I think that's almost a lock pick in the draft. I think a couple of these are. I think this. Jalen Walker, I feel like is pretty locked. These first three, Will Campbell. And then a couple of these picks get a little iffy, and I'm not really sure. Matthew Golden could definitely be a Cowboy. But I think this is one of the ones where you can expect him to be a Bronco by the end of the first day, more than you expect him not to be. As we get to the Steelers, and should I go Shedeur Sanders? I think they're pretty confident in the quarterbacks that they have. But Shedeur has to go first round. He has to. As it goes on, second, third. So, I'm gonna go I'm actually going to pick Shedeur Sanders here. Shedeur Sanders head into the Steelers. He falls decently far in this mock, but I don't see him going out of the first round. So I'm going to pick him there as the guy. And Pittsburgh, you can't have Mason Rudolph starting. Shedeur Sanders is your new starting quarterback. There you go. As we get to the Chargers, a couple of ideal spots for Colston Loveland, if I could speak, to land. Luther Burden, possible landing spot. I don't really see that, though. Malachi Starks, no. This is either an Emeka Ibuka landing spot or a Colston Loveland spot, and I'm going to pick Colston Loveland. He's continued to be... He's a great pickup for the Rams, for the Chargers, for the Broncos even, and even for the Colts all the way up here. But I feel like he falls to the end of the first round. Chargers want some weapons for Justin Herbert, so there you go. You get Colston Loveland. Add him to that room with Ladd McConkey. Quentin Johnston had a decent year last year. I say you go him or wide receiver, and Chargers fans are happy at that point. Could obviously go defensive line here. But at this point, Derek Harmon's probably the only one worth taking, at least this early. And then this is another pick I feel like at this point is a lock. Mike Williams to the Green Bay Packers, pick 23. Brian Gutekunst loves his developmental edge rushers, especially if they're from Georgia or just any player from Georgia. He loves them. Mike Williams is like a miniaturized version of Trayvon Walker, as I've said many times. And to get him at pick 23 is an absolute steal. He's kind of a bit of a sleeper at this point, and I love him there. I think it's a match made in heaven, and one of the best kind of scheme fits in the entire draft as well. As we go to pick 24, Minnesota Vikings going to pick up Malachi Starks, high character player, high motor player, high everything. He's absolutely amazing. One of the best safeties I've watched in all of watching film for, the NFL draft and safeties. Malachi Starks has been absolutely awesome to watch. Getting him late first round might give you some thought of, when the Vikings got Lewis Cine, the safety from Georgia, a couple of years ago. I think he's on the Eagles now. But Malachi Starks is nowhere near as bad as a player like Lewis Cine. Even when he was coming out, I knew it was an overdraft. Drafting Malachi Starks here is perfect, and I could see this definitely happening on draft day, a couple of these picks. I'm pretty happy with how this is coming out so far. It's looking pretty good. Another one that's almost a lock to me at this point is either Gray Zabel at this point or Kelvin Banks. Kelvin Banks, he's a top 5 to 8 pick starting early mock drafts from last season, and to get him at the end of the first round is something that should be definitely coveted. Texans looking to revamp their franchise slightly. They're going a new route, new offensive coordinator, new everything. Kelvin Banks, awesome pick right there. So he's going to the Texans. As we get to the Rams, I picked Jackson Dart in a lot of these. I still think it's a really good pick. If they do pick him there, it's a bit of an overdraft, but you can kind of deal with that. You just stash him away for a year. If not, I'm thinking Josh Simmons is a great pick at this point, because I don't know if I see Jackson Dart going in the first round. I feel like the way that he plays would probably be, but I don't know, because so many quarterbacks went last year: Bo Nix, Michael Penix, Drake May, Jaden Daniels. Do the Rams value him that high? But like I said, he's kind of a match made in heaven for me at this point. Josh Simmons still just sitting here, the tackle from Ohio State. He's not bad. Could improve that offensive line. And the Rams could always go Jackson Dart, say, second round if need be. It's really tough for me. I really want to stick to my gut, pick Dart here, but he's just, I don't know, he's just ranked so low. Nobody else is really saying that he's going to go to the Rams. It's just kind of my thing. So I'm actually going to go Josh Simmons here, and a couple of picks that I've made in the past. And so, no Luther Burden to the Broncos. Changing some things up for this mock. Josh Simmons, tackle out of Ohio State, to the Los Angeles Rams at pick number 26. Then we get here, and if Malachi Starks was still here, the Ravens would be loving it. I think James Pierce is a nice option. I do have a specific team where I'm going to say that he goes to. Shamar Stewart, they're going DB. Trey Amos is a nice landing spot there. Man, this mock is getting long. Really getting into it for this final mock draft. If you guys like I said, feel free to hit the like button, subscribe. Because this is just, there's a lot of analysis going on here. But I feel like this is how the draft is going to somewhat shape up. A couple of these picks will be wrong, a couple will be right. We'll see what lands and what doesn't. Could this be a Tyler Booker landing spot? I don't think so. I'm going to pick Shamar Stewart here. I know the obvious pick is kind of James Pierce Jr., but I think they would value a player like Shamar Stewart a lot more than they would value James Pierce, and I feel like he falls to the end of the second, or the end of the first round. So I'm going to go Shamar Stewart to the Ravens there. They get a nice edge piece. And then it gets down to the Detroit Lions. A continued pick that I've seen not a lot of people really using. And of course, they could go with Emeka. He's more like another Amon-Ra St. Brown, though, so I don't really see that. I think Carson Schwessinger falls into the first round, or I guess kind of jumps into the first round, and they get a nice linebacker to pair with Jack Campbell. I feel like that's very nice, and that's a Detroit Lions pick if I've ever seen one. So I'm gonna pick him there. I don't think they like James Pierce and value him that high. They don't want Emeka. Maybe a Luther Burden. I can't really see him playing on the Lions though. So I'm gonna go there. And then a couple of great players kind of falling down the board here. And Washington's surprise pick. I've usually been giving them players like Siobhan Revel, and Maxwell Hairston fits really well there. Benjamin Morrison. I'm gonna give them James Pierce Jr. here. It's something somebody else said as well. I can see James Pierce Jr. going to the Falcons. I can see him going to the Ravens right here at this pick. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers could pick him. But I think him fitting on Washington is really nice to get some more edge in that room, and they really need it. And I think it's just another one of these really good fits that I didn't even see until recently. And then I was like, ooh, that could fit really nicely. And also, if you say Carson Schwessinger is an overdraft, go and watch some of his film. This dude plays linebacker like you've never seen people play linebacker before. It's absolutely awesome to watch. So, and shout out to UCLA Dynasty. Carson Schwessinger is an absolute beast in UCLA Dynasty, so don't hate. And if you're a Lions fan, you should be very happy about that pick. And then Luther Burden's still just chilling here. Emeka Egbuka's still just chilling here. And in this mock, it looks like they're kind of falling down. Obviously, Emeka could go right here. Could see him going anywhere, late first round. Just the way the board's shaken up, a couple of these guys fell, but I think you take best player available, and that's Luther Burden for the Buffalo Bills. And then, because there's not really a lot of other great players on the board, you're not going to take Landon Jackson. You might take Derek Harmon here if you want interior defensive line. And then corner, I feel like you're kind of reaching on a couple of these guys. As we get to the Chiefs pick, and they would be kind of a wild card team if a player like Kenneth Grant falls, but I think right here they're going to pick Josh Connerly or Gray Zabel are both nice options, but I think Gray Zabel is going to be their pick. And I think that's a very nice pick for them as well. Gets down to the Eagles, and me as an Eagles fan, I'm picking Emeka Egbuka right here, but I think he either ends up going, he could go to Washington here too. And I don't know why, I just see him slipping out of the first round, which kind of sucks, but there's just so much high talent, so many great players, and it's based off my own analysis. So for the final pick in this final mock, we're going to have the Eagles going. I don't even know. I love Benjamin Morrison here. Jaden Higgins is wide receiver 3, but then you should just pick Emeka Egbuka at that point. Siobhan Revel is a nice option. I have him rated as a top 3 corner in this class. Benjamin Morrison, like I said, it's nice. Princely Uman-Milan is nice. Uman-Milan. I really don't know. It's a really interesting pick to be at. There's still a lot of talent left on the board. But for the Eagles, that cornerback room just got absolutely decimated. know. This is tough. This is a tough pick. I think... Oh. I don't know. I feel like the Eagles are going to try to jump up in this draft. This is such a hard pick for me. Might have to come back. If I'm going, and me as a fan of the Eagles, I'm not really touching any of the edges here, besides Princely Umanmielen or JT Tuimoloau. I'm not really going to touch wide receiver, because, you know, you got A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and even Jahan Dotson at receiver 3. But maybe Emeka Egbuka could be an option here, so he doesn't fall out of the first round. And he's such a talented player, too. That's a really tough pick. Then you could go corner. There's a couple of talented corners on the board. Maxwell Hairston's nice. Siobhan Revel. Benjamin Morrison. I can't wait to do the 3-round mock because I really want to draft these players, but I can't draft them all. And just so Emeka doesn't... Oh, no. He just doesn't fit. He doesn't fit on the Eagles. You know, there's a certain fit. And I'm going to go Benjamin Morrison. I've just been doing it in all my mocks. Obviously, if an edge falls down to them like Shamar Stewart, I see them going Shamar Stewart. Just the way this board ended up falling, I'm going to go with Benjamin Morrison as my final pick to my Philadelphia Eagles. After all of that, 40 minutes straight of just content. I hope you guys like that. That's my final mock draft of the draft season, and I put a lot of, you know, thought and emphasis on this. So I'm very excited to see what actually happens tomorrow when the draft comes on. And will Ashton Jeanty go to the Jaguars? Will Carolina draft a wide receiver? Will Armand Membou go to the Jets? So many questions. Where does Shedeur Sanders fall? You know, where does Kenneth Grant end up landing? You know, mid-first? Or does he fall to the second round? And so many other questions, you know. I'm very excited to be watching that tomorrow. And like I said, I'm going to be streaming it. So if any of you are interested, feel free to tune in. But that is the end of this video. It's been a very long one. And like I said, I hope you all enjoyed. And I will see you all tomorrow for the draft. Thank you. See you then.